This is North America. The year is 1899. Civilization here is on a much different scale than it is today. It's been estimated that during this century over 70 million people lived in the North American continent. But remarkably, with such a high population of human beings inhabiting the land, there are still vast quantities of the natural environment that have barely been touched by humanity. In this series, we shall be exploring the landscapes and wildernesses in a way that has never been seen before. These are the natural wonders of the 5 states. This is the final part of our journey, the state of New Austin. Here, the temperature can soar to over 50 degrees centigrade, making it the hottest place in the whole of North America. This is the American desert. The desert here is so hot that the creatures that survive here are few and far between. During the hottest part of the day, animals have the advantage of seeking shade from the sun's rays if it becomes too unbearable. But for plants, they are fixed to the ground and have no choice but to endure the ferocious heat of the sun. For plants to survive here requires a whole variety of survival tactics. And some of them are quite extraordinary. The desert holly, for example, has devised a unique method of extracting salt from the soil and can excrete it as a white coating on the surface of its leaves, which reflects the heat and makes it a little cooler. You might say that it's developed its own form of sunscreen. The creosote bush may look like it's perished, but it's still very much alive. It has much hardier roots and is able to extract every last drop of moisture from the ground than those of any other plant in this environment. And this has led to a very extraordinary state of affairs which has only recently been discovered. It seems that the creosote bush was one of the first plants to establish itself in the arid sands of the American desert when the desert first appeared. And once it had established its extensive root system, it became extremely difficult for any other plant to grow alongside it. This applied not only to different plants, but to its own seedlings. So the creosote bush tended to spread not by setting seeds and producing a new generation, but by sending out new stems around its base. And as a result, the bush grows into a ring shape like this one here. So these are not separate individual creosote bushes as it may appear, they are one big ring-shaped individual plant. If we travel north in the state of New Austin, there is a species of plant that has developed a much different survival strategy altogether. This is Cholla Springs, and this is home to one of the biggest plants on the entire planet. To many of us, the very symbol of the desert is the cactus. But in fact, this plant lives nowhere else in the world but in the North and South Americas. There are several hundred species of cactus in the American desert, but among the biggest is this one, the saguaro. The saguaro has solved the problems of surviving in great heat and drought very successfully. Its stem is pleated like an accordion, so that when rain does fall, the cactus can expand and quickly absorb as much of the water as possible before it disappears. After a single storm, a saguaro can take up as much as a ton of water in just a few days. Its leaves have evolved into thorns, so reducing the surface area from which the plant may lose water by evaporation. Not only are these thorns a good defensive mechanism, they also break up the wind currents, so that the cactus is wrapped as it were in still air and evaporation of moisture from the stem is kept very low. These huge saguaro cacti can live for over 200 years and grow up to 50 feet high. And the biggest can weigh up to 9 tons, of which 90% of that is water. For a plant, having an ability to retain so much water is the difference between life and death. There is very little rain in the American desert, so all plants must take full advantage. But far more often, there is a weather pattern that occurs that is far more extreme. Dust storms like these appear without warning and reduce visibility for hours over areas the size of Britain. The heavy sands rise only a few meters off the ground, but the dust can be thrown thousands of meters into the sky. The ferocious wind, armed with grains of sand, is the agent that has shaped this landscape to the way that it is today. Water, as well as sand, has had a major impact in the shaping of these lands. Ancient rivers flowing across sandstone country steadily widened these canyons, and now the land between them has been reduced to spires and pinnacles. water, scarce though it is, does eventually arrive. And when it does, the desert transforms. The few flowers that live here are able to bloom and produce little pockets of colour. Our planet contains natural wonders and landscapes of extraordinary beauty. And yet, there is still so much out there to be discovered. But our world is falling into a rapid decline. Our wilds are not so wild anymore. We as human beings have a responsibility like nothing else. If we and generations are still to discover the hidden mysteries of our planet, we must give back to the environment from which we have so relentlessly taken away. It's the most precious thing we have, and we are part of it. We must act fast before it's too late. Before we destroy this world for good. It's now or never.